Hello lovely people, the Halloween holiday season has started and if your game didn't get a Halloween update, the devs are slacking, let's be honest. The number of Steam news articles I read about Halloween stuff is nuts. Every game does this, and that also means I'm not gonna cover any of it. Unless it's like super amazing, but I don't think there's any of it in this episode. What is definitely in this episode is the Mix Next event that happened, showcasing tons of indie games. I will bring many of those to your attention because this is good stuff to put on your radar. For almost all of these Mix games there are demos available as well, so take advantage of those opportunities. All of this means plenty of stuff to talk about this week, so let's start with reveals. Kicking off right away from that Mix showcase with third-person ARPG Stray Blade, which dropped a new gameplay trailer and this game looks very impressive actually. The environments seem epic, combat has a nice ring and feel to it. Voice acting in the trailer at least is solid and the vast worlds on display here just scream out to be discovered. You got a pet wolf as well, what more do you want? It's planned for next year. Also planned for next year and also third-person ARPG is Kaku Ancient Seal. This is a more primal inspired game by the looks of things, but what stands out, apart from the vibrant visuals, is the combat. Looks rather smooth once again and very impactful. I like that. Otherwise, there isn't a whole lot of info on this game, so let's move on to the next one, which is quite interesting. I'm talking about Backfire Wall _, a first-person tragicomic adventure set inside a smartphone. You are the update assistant and it's up to you to solve a bunch of wacky puzzles to counter the update and save the previous operating system from deletion. The fate of the operating system is in your hands. Nothing too serious, but pure indie nonsense, and I feel a very fun take on the inside of a smartphone, something you don't really think about while using it every day. It releases December 5th. Airhead, a 2D platformer, was also shown at Mix. The music is very soothing in this one, at least in the trailer. It's got an interesting, unique art style and the whole premise is that you somehow get a head from a sliced-through monster, which you put on, and using your head you can solve puzzles and traverse the Metroidvania levels. It's kinda weird, not gonna lie, but fine. No release date yet on this one. I have more Metroidvania stuff for you guys, boasting a pixel art style this time. I'm talking about Akatori, a game where your staff plays an important role both as a weapon but also as a mechanic to make your way across the levels. You can throw it out, stick it in the wall and then jump on it to advance. This gameplay trailer doesn't really show you anything fancy. It seems extremely basic in fact, but I'll keep track of this one. There's no release date yet. Something much more promising, at least in my mind, in terms of originality that is, a game called Paper Trail. This is a game where you can fold the paper levels that you're on in order to make the protagonist move to the next level. It reminded me of another game I covered recently. It's called Ilia, where you had to use mirrors to do basically the same thing, solve the puzzles in the levels with reflections and all. Similar concept, but both rather unique. Paper Trail is made by only 3 people and its unique design concept surely stands out. Release is planned for next year. Up next from Mix, Voltaire the Vegan Vampire. You can't go wrong with a title like that, let's be honest. This is an action farming roguelite where instead of sucking humans dry for blood, you are cultivating plants. It seems peaceful enough, although the trailer shows you flying around, spitting out a bunch of fireballs, so it might not be that peaceful after all. This one looks very interesting, not in the least because of the gameplay and art style. Release is next year. From my own home country comes Bulwark, a solo dev game by Thomas Sala, who previously made The Falconeer. Bulwark is set in the same universe. It's marketed as a relaxed city builder, which is my favorite type of city builder, and this thing looks extremely interesting, not gonna lie. Sure, duchies are biased towards other duchies, but doesn't this just look phenomenal? The website states that the game features light resource management, combat and story elements which bring your creation to life whilst giving a voice to its inhabitants and allowing you to expand it with exotic new build options. This is one of those games that focus much more on the creative architectural side of the city building rather than the management, which I feel is great. A game like Dwarf Romantic seems to have a similar approach, for example. The aesthetic here is quite something as well, and I can't wait to get my hands on this one, honestly. There's no release date yet, however. I got more impressive solo dev work for you. One of those can be seen in Farewell North, a narrative puzzle game from Kyle Banks, where you are a border collie traveling the Scottish Islands together with your human master. The human girl is dealing with loss, and it's your job to ease her journey by bringing color back to the world. I love these sorts of games. They're much more than just games, with the black darkness symbolizing the loss and you bringing color back to the world, relieving some of that anxiety of hers. It's beautiful, what else can I say? You can go on this journey together next year. Surfing on to Wavetale, a story-driven action-adventure game where you're gliding across the seas, visiting locations, saving people, fighting monsters, all accompanied by a beautiful soundtrack if we can believe the trailer, or hear the soundtrack in the trailer. This is quite refreshing, I feel, not in the least because you're on the open sea. The visual design is outstanding and this launches fairly soon as well, December 12th. For those wanting some good old roguelite action, check out Gatekeeper. It is exactly that. It features several playable characters with unique abilities to suit your playstyle, limitless skill combinations, co-op, a unique totems system opening the path to new locations, 100 plus collectibles, 100 plus different items such as modifiers, artifacts, structural changes, amulets, cursed signatures and runes of creation, and each of those collectibles change the gameplay and make every run a unique adventure. Expect a dozen unique planets, enemies and bosses, and that's about it. No release date just yet. We're almost done with Mix. Here you can meet Inkbound, a co-op online roguelike game, and by looking at this top-down third-person game, you would think this was another action RPG. But it's not. For example, combat is turn-based, which is peculiar in a game and setting like this. You have to aim your skills and your skill shots like in a MOBA. Combat is fairly fast-paced, but turn-based after all. The roguelike aspect there is the incremental upgrades, and each run has a final boss and all that kind of stuff, that's pretty standard, but it still seems like a fun game. Finally, let's talk Flateye, a resource management sim with an emphasis on story and narrative choices. Oversee the world's leading technological hub while you explore stories linked to discoverable technology and interact with your most loyal customers. This one releases soon, November 14th. Then, announcements. Remember Wolcen, lovely people, it still exists and the devs are still working on it and they're working on chapter 4. In the October developer update, they gave a sneak peek of that chapter. Let me run you through it. Narrative-wise, the devs aren't spoiling anything, of course, but they do tell who the new bad boy is going to be, a villain named Ahriman. And you can't just complete the act and take on that new and powerful foe, you first have to weaken him. This lore element allows the devs to weave in various war table expeditions into the campaign because you weaken him by doing side missions. These side missions include killing so-called lieutenants, and those lieutenants have one of his powers, and by defeating those lieutenants, Ahriman's powers weaken. You can also expect a new, very rewarding and very nasty modifier heavy stuff on these maps, so that's gonna be cool too. The missions will be a new feature available on the war table, bringing the total of number of different contents you can do at those war tables, I believe at 6 if I'm not mistaken. All in all, interesting idea, I really like what I'm reading here. And there's more, we're talking some seriously hefty patch here. For example, new city buildings to construct, new random endgame fights mid-operation, uncapped scaling of operations because you'll be able to go above level 217, which is the current cap, a bunch of new unique items and a gigantic balancing pass of all skills, all skill modifiers, all nodes in the Gate of Fates. Specific nodes in the Gate of Fates are reworked to help boost two-handed play, a general reduction to the XP curve for player levels, a general reduction in city building costs. These two reductions are actually buffs. And they're looking at unique items with a significant increase in power for underperforming items, so that's more buffs. Maybe Wolcen will return, people, copium. Not a word on timelines, however, but hey, at least this is something to look forward to. Then, staying in the hack and slash ARPG genre, a little bit of PoE news because it's still a little bit indie. Lake of Kalandra is not going core, a little bit of a shame because the mirrored items were fun, although still underwhelming in many cases. The lakes, though, far from being fun. I think most people are glad we aren't seeing those anytime soon. PoE announced the November events as well, with by far the most exciting one being Mayhem. This mode puts 20 rogue exiles, 20 strong boxes, 20 invasion boxes, 10 breaches, 20 tormented spirits, 20 harbingers, a mirror of delirium or beyond in every single zone. And I'm assuming this will actually stack with Scarabs and Atlas modifiers. This is going to be truly mayhem and I can't wait to play that stuff. Seems like fun, especially while mapping. November 14th, Endless Delve, not a bad mode at all. And November 21st, Delirium Everywhere. Last time I quit this event on the ledge, which was like 92% delirious. The devs claimed to have fixed that, but Delirium just isn't a fun mechanic and I can't imagine too many people will be playing this mode. Early access in the ARPG Striving for Light announced their upcoming major patch launching November 10th. This patch 0.7 has a few key features like the Hall of Persistence, a new arena mode which can be accessed during your runs whenever you find a mysterious portal. In the new arena mode, you are fighting waves of enemies with a tempting offer after each wave. Choose wisely if you want to accept the reward or continue for even bigger loot. I really like that the arena is incorporated into the regular runs, something that Kill Squad also does, for example. It breaks the gameplay loop a bit in a good way, and I wish more ARPGs would think about how to make your regular runs more interesting. In particular, Last Epoch. Next patch has new story content, revamping all of the current story elements as well as all voice acting. That is really necessary, the voice acting, because I think the devs did it themselves or some relatives of them, because all the voice acting currently has this like thick German accent. It's kind of funny and I'm aware of my own accent, but you know, I'm not a voice actor. The final reveal here is that Striving for Light brings an updated dialogue system. There's one more announcement regarding this game, a price increase. Normally I'm a little skeptical with price increases, especially in early access, but this game is very cheap. It's got a lot to offer. I've been playing it a ton lately and the new price of €9 is completely acceptable and a great price for what you're getting. Automaton, a RPG Steelrising, which recently released, already announced a DLC package called Cagliostro's Secrets. It launches November 10th and here is what is in the DLC for which the price is still unknown. One level, Hôpital Saint-Louis, one entirely new quest in the main story, 5 weapons, 1 boss, several new enemies and new variations of existing enemies, 2 new characters and new side quests that will invite you to revisit certain levels. Viking Colony Sim, Land of the Vikings, announced their early access launch date, November 8th. This game features seasons, resource management, settlers with 20+ perks, weather and events which you need to survive, trading, raiding, celebrations, decorations and a tech tree. I can't get enough of colony sims and city builders, so sign me up. It has a decent price of €20 or dollars minus 10% at launch, which seems fair. Edengate, The Edge of Life, was supposed to release this week, but was pushed to November 15th. You can guess what the reasons were for this 2-week delay. Going once, going twice. Exactly. Polish. I wish them well polishing. I'm still excited for this narrative-driven adventure. And if any of these games look interesting, be sure to wishlist them. It helps the devs out a lot. And similarly, you can subscribe to this channel and like the video, which helps me out a lot. Proceeding with the patch Plaza, bringing an overview of patch news. Dune Spice Wars, the sci-fi RTS game that is still in early access but is doing fantastic, launched an accessibility update. If you were ever on the fence about this game because you are colorblind or you're sensitive to flashes, then this is going to help out a lot. This update brings colorblind modes, a magnifier, a photosensitive mode removing flashes from the game, an enemy or overlay to make them stand out more, and several opacity options, for example for the chat. While I don't really suffer from any of these things, I still feel it's very important that developers also take those into account with some limitations when it comes to gaming, so I'm always happy to see these sorts of updates. Oaken, a turn-based tactical roguelike set in the spirit inhabited world, released their latest patch called Daigo the Mystic. That is another spirit, I assume. I've never played this, but that might change soon because I was offered a key. I've been tracking this game for quite a while as well. Anyway, back to the patch, it brings a new guide, Daigo, centered around movement. There's gamepad support and the devs made a glossary as well with all keywords listed and additional tutorials. Then releases, looking back at what released last week. Roguelite twin stick shooter Icy Red dropped and hit the bullseye it seems, scoring an 86% on Steam. This game is only €8, so hard to go wrong there. Yomawari Lost in the Dark actually turned out to be part of a whole Yomawari franchise, I was not aware of that. And this game is €40. That's a lot of money for a game like this, but Steam users seem happy either way, scoring it a 90%. Critics appreciate it too, because OpenCritic scored it an 80 strong rating. To compare, for €40 you can also buy Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord, sitting at an 87% positive rating on Steam. This medieval strategy game was already a huge success and is now out officially. Paper Cut Mansion cut their way into early access for €18. You can pick this up. There are only 6 Steam reviews, 2 of them are negative, claiming that the mouse controls are absolutely horrible, to which the devs replied it will be fixed next patch, or at least improved. Probably a good idea to wait this one out for a while, also because it doesn't seem to sell all that well. Sins of a Solar Empire 2 released on Epic, but they don't do user scores over there, also the critics haven't scored this one yet. Signalis, on the other hand, is going great. It's getting an 82 from Metacritic, an 81 from OpenCritic, but it all bleaks in comparison to what Steam users rate it, no less than a 97% user rating. This is available for $20 on Steam or for free on Game Pass if you have a subscription. Looking ahead at what is releasing this week, October 31st, Halloween, the Unliving releases. It's a roguelite action RPG where you can turn the enemies you just murdered into an undead army to do your bidding. That's kind of an interesting concept. The game features randomized levels, collectible upgrades, epic bosses, and of course a lot of dying and retrying, with it being a roguelite. One day later, November 1st, another roguelite launches, Against the Storm. This combines roguelite with city building, which is a strange combination, and I have a whole video on this early access game where I review the game and primarily dive into this combination. I think it is an interesting video to watch and hopefully it highlights the issues and strengths before you try this one out. November 2nd, The First Men, an early access title about Adam and Eve and their generations to come. I wonder if Cain kills his brother here too. Anyway, this is a colony sim inspired by games such as RimWorld. It features character-driven base building with hundreds of traits and progression of individual members. There's party-based exploration, including combat. The devs added a bit of fantasy to the biblical era, which is fantasy depending on what you believe in. Most people don't believe in dragons, however, but they are in the trailer nonetheless, so that should be fun taking those down. Also, fighting squirrels with iron helmets, don't ask me. Game seems interesting enough though, that's for sure. November 3rd, we got no less than 4 games coming up. Up first is From Space, a solo and co-op action shooter for squads up to 4 players. Take on the challenge of liberating the Earth from an alien infestation with your friends using over-the-top weaponry in a post-apocalyptic world with awesomely stylized graphics. Good summary right there. Nothing too serious this one, but could be a lot of fun. Second game, Valor. This hack-and-slash arena ARPG is currently in early access and plans for a full release. It features 5 different playable gladiators, each with their own unique skill trees, 4 unique weapons per gladiator, each with their own playstyles. You can customize your build with quite literally infinite possibilities using the rune system, and there are 50 plus upgrades for your environments, weapons, affixes, etc. Third game on November 3rd, Ghost Song. This is a solo dev project from developer Matt White. I think this is his first game ever. Ghost Song is a Metroidvania sci-fi game with beautiful animations and art style. The levels, the weapons, the movement, it is all simply gorgeous and hard to believe just one man created all of this, but he did, and we can play it soon. The fourth and last game, an interesting one I feel, it is The Chant. This is a game about a girl, Jessie, retreating to a remote island to re-evaluate her life. That is a millennial thing. Unfortunately, the organization that she has the trip with is actually a weird-ass supernatural cult, and what was supposed to be a quiet time reflecting on life turns out into a horrific adventure clinging on to dear life. The graphics do look a little bit like PlayStation 2 to me, but hey, the game itself could be very interesting. Talking Steam Deck and demos, I really haven't played much of that at all. I started playing Persona 5 actually, because people kept telling me to. This is potentially the best JRPG I've played in a very long time. Final Fantasy VII, the remake, comes close, and that game is pure nostalgia for me, but holy moly, Persona 5 is quite something. Everything is incredibly well made, from the characters to the fighting to the UI, and especially the music really stole my heart. There's some super slick professional drum beats and bass lines, guitar riffs going on, just smooth tunes in there, really elevating the game massively. Go play this stuff on Game Pass, or at least try it so you know what people are so ecstatic about. It's amazing. And the final section, free games. Epic this week has Saturnalia, a horror adventure game, seems legit for Halloween, and something quite rare because on offer is a good Warhammer game, Warhammer 40k Mechanicus, a turn-based tactical game set in the Warhammer universe. Uncle Phil from Game Pass brings us 3 games. Frog Detective, which is just weird, let's face it. No idea if this is good, I just thought it was funny and weird. There's Gunfire Reborn, a solid roguelite game that recently launched into full release. Apparently this is a decent game, and finally more than decent as it turns out, but we already covered it, Signalis. And that's it. If you have any questions or remarks, put them in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did and you want more like this, consider liking the video or even subscribing. Thanks for watching and making it to the end. Love you all, see you soon, bye bye.